Welcome to This is Getting Old. I'm your host, Melissa B., PhD, and today I'm just going to give you an overview of kind of my vision for this podcast series and want to thank you for joining me on this journey as we begin to talk about all of this stuff that isn't ready for a world that's getting ready to have more older adults on it than children for the first time in human history. So we have a lot of work to do and we have a lot to talk about. So thank you for joining me. So for this podcast series, we'll be talking about a variety of different topics ranging from kind of clinical care of older adults to things that family caregivers need to know. We could be talking about current research or research that's been done before and sharing that with you to help you with providing care for older adults or how that research might impact policy. All of these different topics are things that we'll talk about because I really just wanted to have an opportunity to share some of the things that I know about in caring for older adults that aren't commonly known by most people. And I have a variety of interests, and so we will just kind of see where this path takes us. But if you are a caregiver or you're listening to this podcast and have a particular question, you're welcome to leave those for me here under the YouTube chat box, and I can always do a show about that. So one of the things I'd like to do is to share different models of care that are out there, things like PACE and niche, but also what resources are available. The area agencies on aging have great resources for people as they age, as well as the Alzheimer's Association if you're dealing with someone that has a little bit of a memory issue. They're also a great resource. One other area that I'd like to talk about is current research and how that research can impact the lives of people today. Typically within a particular area of research, it takes about 20 years from the time the scientist discovers it for it to actually reach the public or end up in clinical practice guidelines. And so we want to kind of shorten that timeline. So if there's something that's come out that I know about that might be able to help you, I will share that. One example would be a couple of years ago, I was watching the news, and this is when Casey Kasem got lost. And I knew that Casey Kasem had Lewy body dementia. And they said in the news that he had gotten into his car and driven away, and they were looking for him. And I thought to myself, I wonder if they know they need to search for people with Alzheimer's disease differently that don't have dementia. And I knew a friend of mine down in Florida who had done some research with first responders and looked at records of people with dementia that had gotten out and gotten lost. And typically, if someone gets out of their house, the first responders just need to draw like a 1 mile radius around the home and then begin to search for that person as though they were scared and frightened. I think a lot of times we have this conception in our mind that if you had a cognitive impairment, you'd be walking around the sidewalk like, hey, where am I? What am I doing? This particular nurse scientist research demonstrated that people will hide because that part of the brain is intact. So fight, flight, or fright remains intact. And so if you looked closer to the home, but looked for places that people might hide to try to find safety or shelter because they are confused, that's how you would search for them. And if someone gets into a car and drives away, they will be able to manage the car and drive without any problems, but once they run out of gas, they're not going to have the problem-solving ability to figure out what's wrong with the car. So the goal is to find that vehicle first and draw the 1 mile radius around that, and then begin the search in the same way. The person's most likely not going to be out like waving their arms saying, hey, here I am. They're going to try to protect themselves because one of the things that Alzheimer's does is it takes away your ability to solve problems. So to me, that was like just a quick little fun fact based on something I'd heard on the news. And so a lot of these podcasts may be in response to events like that. So another area of interest for me is also in the policy arena. And so this has to do with the Health and Aging Policy Fellowship that I did, and I'll tell you more about that experience later. But what are some of the policies that could be in place, should be in place, and how would that improve quality of life for older adults as they age? So we'll highlight some of the work of the United States Senate Special Committee for Aging. A lot of things that they're interested in include like fraud and elder abuse, scams is a big focus for them. Alzheimer's is a big focus for them. They have an annual Alzheimer's hearing every June. Older abuse, neglect, those types of things. As they're doing different hearings, could either tag on to that or share some of their past work with you, because I do think that they're a very important committee in the Senate. And obviously I'm a little biased, but want to share some of their work that might not be as well known as some of the other committees. Some other things that I may talk about are different think tanks or organizations that are doing either briefings here in DC or any of their new reports that are coming out. For example, during my policy fellowship, AARP released a big report on the impact of social isolation. And social isolation as you age is basically like smoking a pack of cigarettes every day. But social isolation is a major issue to the point that in England, they actually created like a whole task force to deal with the impact of social isolation. So another thing I may talk about would include things like social media and how to use technology, and in particular to amplify nursing's voice in the media. There was a study done, it's called the Woodhull study, and they looked at the number of journalists and the types of people that they took quotes from and saw expertise from, and nursing is like the least represented voice in journalism. So they did a 10-year Woodhull 2 study and found that not much had changed. And so part of my work is around helping healthcare providers, but in particular nurses, to amplify their voice so that they can become a noise breaker and not just a noise maker. We may talk about how to engage policymakers or even write policies or write op-eds, but to figure out some way to get nursing's knowledge and expertise into the hands of decision makers so that we can make the world a better place for everyone of all ages. So thank you for joining me on This Is Getting Old. I look forward to seeing where the podcast series will go. If you have ideas for topics, please leave them for me here, or you can reach me on my website. Any questions you may have, would be happy to try to answer those for you. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.